To get this engine running on the bench, we need to clean out the 94 carby, find a good airbox and get an exhaust organised. So they're the things on the plate today. This Mikuni carburetor looks quite familiar to me. It's externally, it looks like it's in pretty good shape. It's got all the screws there. It'd be interesting what's in behind the choke cover there. I saw that there's a hook on the end of that goes under a screw broken off. That's the idle adjuster. It's got the wrong type of screw through that hose clamp there, probably a different hose clamp. But otherwise it's looks like it's in pretty good shape externally, so let's tear into it and see what it's like internally. The float bowl had some green sticky residue in the bottom of it. The vacuum diaphragm was all intact. Choke components were all complete. Floats were a bit sticky and the pin was hard to remove. The vacuum chamber was very dirty. The throttle cable end and the idle screw was fine. I removed and cleaned all the jets. Used carburetor throttle body cleaner to clean the internals and externals. Then a wash in hot soapy water. Well, that's this carburetor cleaned up. That orifice there was blocked, and I found that on my two other carburetors, on my two other quad bikes, and it's a 0.65 millimetre hole that runs through there to the bottom of the needle, and the brass seat that needle sits into, remember it pushes out, undo the main jet in the top here, in the bottom, and press that main jet, I think they call it an emulsion tube. There's a tube running through there, that's the end of it there. In that tube there's 0.65 millimetre holes too that can get blocked. Use the same drill to clear this hole, to clear the holes in that. And otherwise it was just a standard sort of clean up. I didn't use any new parts in it. Well, I say that, but I used some second-hand parts out of carby kits that I bought for previous carby rebuilds. I think I had a better O-ring, and that was the main thing it needed. I think one of these tiny little O-rings that goes on the adjuster for the this thing. That screw there, which is the fuel mixture adjuster, which I haven't used from this kit, has a washer like that on it, and a little spring like that, and an O-ring like that. Now that's the used O-ring. I had another one from this kit that I put in to make it to change over in this carburetor. You can see how clean that's looking now. Externally it's probably not as clean as it is internally, but yeah, that's ready to go. I'm going to be able to bolt that on my new engine and be fairly confident that that's going to do the job. The needle and seat, the float valve that basically is at the end of this tube and lets the fuel into the bowl. I just reused what I had. I didn't have a new one. I've blown through here to test whether that valve seems to be working, and it does. It didn't. The actual the needle with its spring-loaded top didn't have a wear mark on the tip of it like others that I've had in these kits. I think I've posted videos or pictures in the past of the wear that they get right on the tip, but it still seem to be sealing, and it's not going to stop the bike running at this stage. If I have trouble with the carburetor, I'll get another $20 kit and change those bits over as well. So that's what it looks like. Sits in the bike up like that. Fuel line on here. Vacuum line to the fuel pump up. No, the vacuum line to the fuel pump on there. This one goes to the petcock, and this is just a vent pipe that vents the float bowl, and usually the pipe that goes on that runs all the way up to where the top of the snorkel, just so that water can't find its way down into the carburetor. Choke components are all there. The little brass fitting for the end of the throttle cables in there, and I've got the idle adjuster out at the moment, just soaking in some vinegar to hopefully remove a bit of the surface rust on it, but it seems to be complete. I've got the spring and the washer for it over here. That's the float bowl gasket or O-ring seal. They're the two worst ones I've got. I used one of those that was better in this kit, and so it's all back together and looking pretty clean. As messy as this looks, inlet pipe there has the mesh inside it there, and the original clamp on there, be it a bit mangled, and original screws in it. I've got this part which I've cleaned up off the other cylinder head. I must compare those side by side as to whether, with the different carburetors, whether this one's actually bigger on this side. I'm almost looking at that thinking it is. Take that one off and check it out. Okay, there's definitely a difference in these pieces. This one measures about 32 millimeters across the opening there, and the other one over there is 40. So this clamp on there, which is seized on there at the moment, I am not going to bother trying to loosen. I removed this from the cylinder head. This one came out with an impact driver, or one that you hit with a hammer. And the same screw on this side did not, it stripped out. So I used a cold chisel in a couple of places there, and then it loosened up and came out. So I'm thinking, oh, that's good, but then you look down the hole there, the water's got into the back of the valve as well. Mess things up inside there, so I don't know whether this cylinder head is toast because of that, or it's going to go in the spares box anyway to keep it on hand in case there's other parts. I worked out that the camshaft I'm using in the 94 engine is actually the one that was in this cylinder head. I had a close look. These pieces, I'd had the cam cover. In fact, this was in pieces. The cam cover was off separated from this base, and I had to actually try and match which cam cover matched the cylinder head, and because they looked very similar, and it was really on the RTV that I determined that this one matched this head. The camshafts were out as well, and I just picked up one of the two camshafts and dropped it in here with a sprocket, just to have this cylinder head complete. And looking back at this one, this camshaft has got scoring on the journals where the other head is damaged, and so I've used the best camshaft by chance to get the other engine going. I didn't show it, but I used a little bit of fine emery paper in the aluminium journals on the head that I'm running, where there was scoring, and it knocked some of the high spots off, and we'll see how that goes. But so this input tube and the mesh inside it is no use to me. I haven't got a mesh like that. I don't know what the mesh in there actually does when it doesn't block the whole tube. It must tend to catch something or help with atomization or something. Maybe any fuel droplets or something that get through the carburetor maybe get stuck there and then atomize again from there. But I haven't got a mesh like that to put into my later model carburetor inlet. Also, this carburetor has got an O-ring seal between the cylinder head, and it runs in that big groove there. This older style one just ran a paper gasket there. So there are differences that are becoming apparent between an 88 or 89 engine and a 2000. I know the 90 had the later carburetor, and the inlet, I think is the same as this one, and it had the other one I did had the stainless steel mesh in there, so I'm not dreaming that up. Anyway, I haven't got an original clamp, or I haven't found one at this stage. I've got a dodgy hose clamp that I took off this one. I have messed up one of the screws. I'll go looking through some of the junk. I think vaguely I saw some screws like that somewhere, so I'll see whether I can get original screws, and I'm sure I can find an O-ring that will suit this. There may even be one in the gasket kit I was using. So that's what I'll do next. One of the benefits of making videos while you're building something is that you can look back on them, and occasionally they remind you about something you haven't done. And that's the case with these nuts here. I had forgotten to put those on. I was watching a video showing me putting these ones on, and I thought, I've left those off, so I'll come back and do that now. There's a gasket and O-ring. The O-ring goes in that groove there. This is an exhaust gasket that was also in the kit. I'm going to fit those bits. There's a what they call a net that goes in there on the intake that I don't have, and I may order one. I may even order a new clamp for it, just so that I've got original parts. That's the dodgy hose clip that was with this. I've got a new air filter element in there, happened to be left over from the last job I did on the 96. The 96's air filter was good enough to just reuse, hadn't been replaced long by the look of it. I've given these a bit of a buff on the wire wheel, cleaned them up. The two rubber connections are in reasonable condition. Every time you let them dry out a bit you see more dirt, but pretty right on the inside, which is probably where it matters most. So I'm going to put the cover on there, put the hose on the front, and go and put it on the carburetor. That's the airbox and carby fitted. I've even got the drain and breathers connected to the airbox. Doesn't look too bad considering it came out of the Chook shed. You know, when you wire brush up the hose clips and thoroughly clean out the plastic components, clean up the rubber tubes. That's the original, oh that's the dodgy hose clip. I haven't got a replacement for that at the moment. But so the breathers are on. That's the crankcase breather, and this is a drain off the back that comes down to a clear section and a plug in the bottom, so you're not sucking air up through that hose. Another item that's almost looking brand new. So things to do, I've still got to put an exhaust on. I've got to, that's a vent tube on there, probably doesn't need anything on it, but this is a vacuum line to go to the fuel pump. I'm not going to run a fuel pump, I'm just going to drip feed it, so that probably needs to be blocked off. And this is a vacuum line to the petcock, which probably should be blocked off as well for my test start. I think I'll hunt out an exhaust next. Just for shits and giggles, I plugged that tail light into the back of the loom, and I'll come around here to my ignition switch and go on. Look at that. Off. Lights on. Lights off. Well, that's a cleaned up exhaust fitted. There's the other nut there. I think I've used the exhaust gasket that came in the kit under there, and this exhaust pipe has been wire brushed along its length. To some extent it's still just temporary, a rust there that I missed. But the interesting thing about this exhaust, the whole thing was covered in that sand and cement type stuff that's been over everything. This pipe is a bit different to a standard one, with this cone shaped end on it. I am guessing that that's steel there and this is stainless steel, and that's why it's not rotted out. It only had a rough buff up on the wire wheel, but it came up a lot nicer than what I'm used to. But the 90 bike that I put together, that should be good. Another gem in the Chook shit. I found a piece of 7/8 tubing. It's pretty light gauge stuff, but it's the right size for a handlebar. So I'm going to mount the throttle up there, and the bar goes all the way through the frame there. So I've got the run stop switch and choke over here. I've got to get the throttle cable over to the carburetor and the choke cable around to the carburetor as well, but that's as far as I've got tonight. It's not going to get the bastard going tonight, we'll get the bastard going tomorrow. I've got to repair the throttle cable and get the choke cable connected, and then we'll get the thing started.